got a request, quite a serious request, that you want to look at the essays again in detail. So today we are going to look at essays, in introductions, paragraphs, and conclusions. The question is, what is an essay? An essay usually has a subject matter, and by self-learning indicates that for some information you take responsibility. Either you find it in your study guides or you find it from other sources, which you need to acknowledge. Then, what I mean by social learning, that you will find, or if you do not belong to a study group, at least have some understanding of what other people think. So if you agree with the topic, you will find articles written by people who do not agree, or who agree partially, but not all the time. And that brings you to understanding. Now, therefore, an essay is a way of understanding an issue by interpreting it, and it is logically coherent. So you collect facts or information, you interpret them, and your interpretation then must be logically coherent. Coherent means that you are focused. You start your argument, and we are to discuss what exactly an argument is. But you start your argument, and then you take your reader, in your case the examiner, you take them from point A to B to C. And if you decide to do A, D, M, they must still see they must understand, how do you get from A to your next point, to your next point, to your conclusion. That is coherent. And then you do not make up stories. This isn't an essay at our level, is not the same kind of essay that you get the people to write in class. When you have when you teach yourself, you encourage the children to use their imagination. In this case, we engage our critical thinking, not our imagination. Now, we get different kinds of essays, and in the academic world, I left out the narrative essay, because you don't tell a story. Your reports, you have, yes, you will sometimes in some modules, you'll be asked for a report, but that report is not the same as a story. Because in a story, we have direct speech, we have figurative language, and that we do not have in an academic essay. So we get the two kinds that you have to be able to do in the academic world is the expository, where you discuss, and when you get the instruction to discuss, it's quite important that you know that discuss means more than one point of view. The other way is explore. So you think about a topic, let's say the return to school at the end or during lockdown. Now, of course, you as a teacher will look at it from how am I going to make sure all the students are at least at the same level in their understanding. So you start thinking about evaluation. How are you going to cope with the fear of children coming back? And you look at it from an educator's point of view. If you listen to the news, you will see that, and you are thinking in terms of your students. If you look at the union, SATU does not believe the schools are safe enough to go back. So from that, SATU looks at the same information from a different point of view. The social workers will again have another point of view because they think about what happens if a mother has to leave their home at 5 o'clock in the morning, but this child is only leaving for school at 7. How's the child going to be safe in that time? So when you are asked to explore an issue, that means that you look at it from more than one discipline. And in your case, in a teacher's case, it's often from developmental psychology, and then from pedagogy, how this knowledge, how am I going to get this knowledge to my students? An expository essay can also ask you to compare. For instance, if you have more than one theory, you must be able to compare the two theories, because if we think about developmental psychology, some theories concentrate on what the child's physical development must be. For school readiness, he must be able to handle and cope with a pen that you have to hold in a certain way, and he has to be able to color between lines at least. Where another developmental theory is far more concerned with the child's cognitive availability. And that's also important. So when you have to compare, it is usually to say either which is the best, which aspect should be applied, and that is the expository essay. The argumentative essay means that you have to convince your reader of your point of view. And we are going to explore the idea of what an argumentative essay is. I'm going to go back to the chat group to make sure that you have entered your numbers. Okay, Dan, it seems that you and I have the whole class to ourselves, but that doesn't matter. Dane, can you, I suppose you can see my screen. Okay. And this is where, please just add your student number. I saw that you added that on the other chat, but add your student number, and then I'm going to keep you muted because it just makes it easier. I don't know if you have children. I have somebody else in my house at the moment, so it is a good idea just to keep you muted. Now, if we look at argument, and this isn't a verbal fight as we have an argument usually in ordinary language. An argument in the academic world seeks the truth, and that means more than looking for the facts. It's not only a fact would be the child is 6 years old, but it is about how do I interpret the fact. What does it mean that this child is 6 years old? How must I treat him? What am I going to do with the facts that I have? And then at the end, your argument must be presented in such a way that the person you are speaking to agrees with your argument. Now, the development of an argument, can you see this is what I meant when I spoke about exploring an idea? That in this case, they had to look at it from a social point of view, from an economic point of view, and from the environment's point of view. And within that, this will then be part of, if it's accepted to society, it works economically, and it works for the environment, then that solution will be sustainable. If it works for society and the economy, it's equitable. If it works for the environment and for the economy, it is viable. And there, if it works for the environment and it works for society, it's bearable. But do you see how we develop an argument and explore an idea? So when you make a claim, and I'm coming back to this when I speak about the how do I structure a paragraph, but your claim must be supported by reasons and by evidence. So, and evidence is usually an event or a number or an observation. Then the reasons, can you see how we will structure this? We make a claim. If children are fed properly early in the morning, you have less conflict on the playground. Then what is your evidence? That on the days that the children have a soup kitchen, you do not have that many fights in the on the playground. And then you give your reasons. Therefore, I suggest that we move the soup kitchen early in the morning, because then they will also be able to concentrate better the whole day. So we start an argument with a claim and we give the reasons and the evidence. Then we look for more than one opinion. And people are fond of looking only at a problem from their point of view. Again, with the coronavirus, you have people terribly upset about the cigarettes. Even people who don't smoke are upset about the cigarettes that can't be sold. But instead of people calming down and listen to the other point of view. So if you are an academic and you write about that, you have to find people with more than one opinion, or people with different kinds of opinion. And then the third one is actually the most difficult one, because we have to acknowledge our own assumptions. If we go back to my example of conflict on the playground, some people get terribly irritable if their sugar levels drop and they get very upset. So then I am very likely to think that other people where there's conflict, if I just feed the people, the conflict will stop. But the problem can be on another level. Some people have no problem with children fighting and even hurting one another. So you have to say, what do I assume about the world? And if he disagrees with me, what is his or her underlying assumption? And beliefs of your discipline. You are going to be a teacher. So that is the discipline. And what I should actually add here, the laws regarding your specific discipline. A very well-known one is the one about children may no longer, there may be no corporal punishment anymore. So it doesn't matter how you are going to address the problem of conflict on the school grounds, but going in there with a whip can't be any of them. So what are the values and beliefs, and then very strongly the rules of your discipline? I'm going back to the chat, then we can see if there are any questions. Any questions, Dan? You don't, you understand up till now. What is your, what is the grades you are available for one day, or what will be your field of expertise, the age of the children? Oh, so you're in the foundation phase. That is from grade R to grade 3. Oh, is that grade 0 to 3, or is that the age of the children? Oh, grade 0 to grade 3. Okay, so that's about the age of my grandchildren. My youngest grandchild is just before grade 1. Okay, let's go back to the So when we have an argument, we look at the claim. We start with a claim supported by reasons and evidence. Then it's important to have opinions from different sources and different different schools of thought. And then you have to look at what do I assume about life. For instance, if you work with these, I have to homeschool my grandchild sometimes, and he is in grade 2. I constantly have to calm down and tell myself, but he's not a student. He will still make certain mistakes. My underlying assumption is children in his age group should be doing this and that and that. But it doesn't mean that my assumption is correct. And then whatever argument you have must conform to the values and beliefs of your discipline, and then especially the rules from the school, and then also the laws from the country. Now, in an argument, we have an introduction, then we have one view. If it's an argumentative essay, we then try and find an opposing view. Or in the case of an expository essay, we will have a complementary view. For instance, we spoke about development of children. So now we have this 6-year-old and he has certain behavior problems. Then we explore it from a physical developmental point of view, and that's the kind of information that you then often get from physiotherapists and occupational therapists. You can also ask the opinion of a school psychologist who will see the child more framed by his social context. And then what we also need is then we've looked at it in the social context, at the physical context, and then we can also ask, what about an IQ test, which is again in another, so we explore, or we go to opposing argument. The child is 6 years old, he has behavior problems. Who says it's a behavior problem? Maybe somewhere it's merely because you have certain preconceived ideas that you have a problem with his behavior. So that is quite important. Then in an argumentative essay, you say, what do you find wrong with the opposing argument? Whereas in an expository essay, you combine, the child needs a bit of occupational therapy, and he also needs a bit of cognitive behavior therapy. And that is a way to help a child to behave differently. And then you come to your conclusion. There are certain phases in constructing an argument. So you get your essay. We are going to look at ENG 1514. You have to write a self-reflective essay and you have to write an argumentative essay. First, you have to find the data, and we are going to speak through those two assignments as well. Once you have the data, you need to organize them in some kind of order, and that can be either priority. For instance, this child's behavior problems. Is it in class? Where is it most serious? And then you have another problem and another problem. So you organize the data. It can and then you interpret the data, and then only then do you start building your argument. So we find the data, we organize the data, we interpret the data, and then we start building the argument. I want to go to, this is your, this is an assignment that must be in on the 5th of August. Now the first one, write a mini essay of 3 paragraphs. That's about half a page. It's about 20 to 25 lines, I think, in which you discuss whether this module improved your use of the English language. Consider what your main challenge is and whether the content of the course addressed it. So I'm going to go to the chat, and then I'll unmute you. Then we can simply just speak through this. Here is the assignment. Now we said, first of all, we need to find the data. I'm going to unmute you because it's not necessary if it's... I'm going to make you a presenter, then you can, I can mute you later on again. Then can you speak now then? Okay, you are unmuted, so you can speak now. Okay, where are we going to find the data for an essay like this? What do you think? Then I need feedback from you. Don't you want to speak, or do you prefer to write? I can't hear you. Maybe I've unmuted you. Maybe we should just go back to the I'll try once more. Show. I'm sorry, we will have to go back to the chat line. It doesn't seem as if I can help you to unmute you. So Dane, where do you think will you find the information for this?
Okay, but in this specific, I see that you say it's okay in the prescribed textbooks as well as the information they provided. It is based on your opinion, but in this specific, if you even if you don't do, let's go through the exercise of it. Where are you going to find this information for this self-reflective essay? Because a self-reflective essay means I look I look at my own thoughts and behavior, and I see how what they need from you is a kind of analysis. How do I learn? So you have to discuss. So you have to give more than one opinion or view, and then um, consider what your main challenge is. So when you have to speak English in class and teach, what is your main challenge? Okay, so that, can you see now you have already have some information. I mostly struggle with my tenses. What else? What would you say? What else did you struggle or do you struggle with? Because we are still at the stage where we are looking for information. You only have to write half a page. So I think if we have um, about 3 things, so if you can add 2 more. Sentence construction, you say that your home language is Afrikaans, and maybe explaining myself as I think in Afrikaans and then need to translate before I speak. That shows a remarkable insight, Dane. So first of all, okay, you say that you struggle with tenses. Do you struggle with the tenses, which indicates more or less time and action? Or do you struggle with concord, which is and is, are, was, and were? What do you struggle with? Because now we have three aspects that you admit. Concord. So you feel uncomfortable with the am, is, and are. Then you speak about sentence construction, which is very logical when people have to speak in their second language. And we call that transfer, because you transfer constructions from Afrikaans to English. And often when one speaks, because you translate, and you in Afrikaans we speak about an epidemic, but in English the stress is different. It's an epidemic. So, and then because you think in Afrikaans, the stress is also on the wrong syllable when you speak in English. So we have these. If you now have to organize them, in what order would you organize the problems that you have? First, the concord and the tenses, then your sentence construction, and then your translation. And do you see that the moment that you have organized them, we took, in this case, we decided it's from serious to less serious to just serious. Do you see? So now we have organized it. And then once we've organized it, it's a good idea to go back to the instruction and see what do they want, because now I have my data, in which you discuss whether this module improved your use of the English language. Consider what your main challenge is and whether the content of the course addressed it. So now we have to interpret this. How do you interpret this? Because they say you have to concentrate on your main challenge. If you look here, consider what your main challenge is. So you've looked at yourself, you found 3 areas of concern, and now you've decided the most important one is the concord and the tenses. So how do you reorganize? How do you interpret that? That is your information. So what do you think about that information? Dane, have you unmuted yourself? Because I unmuted you, so I can't understand why it doesn't work. Oh, then
Speak again. Maybe I can hear you now. I'm sorry, I still don't hear anything. And there's, but okay. The question is, if we go back to the instruction, consider what your main challenge is. So we found it, and whether the content of the course addressed it. So did they teach you enough so that you feel better about concord and tenses? Fine. I see that you say that they did touch on tenses and gave us multiple activities that explained it well. So yes, they did help. Dane, I can give you an exercise. This wasn't now, it wasn't part of my lecture, but it's an exercise I've often used with second language students, and it really works a charm. Sit down and write in English for 2 minutes and count the number of words. Then, after a while, you go back and you again write for 2 minutes in English. Don't worry about the language. Don't worry about concord or tenses or anything. Just write and count the number of words. Then you up the number of minutes. So for instance, that for 3 consecutive days, you've done this, and you see that in 2 minutes, you do not get much more than 60 words. I can't remember the exact numbers anymore. You can't get more than 60 words. You make the time longer. That will address this sentence construction and translation, because if you put down as many English words as possible, you teach your brain to start thinking in English, because you don't have time to translate. In the beginning, it's a difficult exercise, but it really works. It's interesting, they did it in Japan with students, and they had after 6 weeks, the students could write for 25 minutes in English. And because they didn't think in Afrikaans, they didn't think in Japanese, they made fewer mistakes than students who had to do corrections and whose work was marked and everything. And it's really a very good exercise. I've had great success with that exercise. Okay, so we have now gone through. Can you see that we have actually worked through this essay? We have collected our data, we have organized them, and we have decided whether the content of the course addressed it. Do you see how we build our argument? We find the information, and then the organization is quite important, because after you've organized it, we've written down 3 problems, but they only want 1. That it's important before you actually start writing, that you go back and make sure you understand the finer detail in the essay. I'm going back to the slides. So how do we write the introduction? The introduction takes a lot of time. An introductory sentence is provided to introduce the marker to the assignment. That is when you use headings, but in your case, you won't use headings. So you have to start off by saying something about your main challenge in your first paragraph. And you have to set out what the essay wants to achieve. So while I was doing this course, I realized that I need to improve my tenses, my usage of tenses and concord. It is necessary to evaluate whether this problem was addressed by ENG 1514. So you set out what the essay wants to achieve. And that, again, is not in your case. So how do I then structure a paragraph? I find that there are many ways to structure a paragraph, but I find that if I follow this structure, I at least keep my paragraph coherent. So see if you can, we start off with a point, and that point is our topic sentence. So you have your most important part, then you give an example, then you explain why that is an example, and then in your last sentence, you refer to the first sentence. You make, I've used it before, I think it was with this group, that a paragraph is like a bead, and we need to close the bead. Otherwise, it's not there. There isn't space for the next bead. I'm going back to the chat. I want you to see if you can write a paragraph like that in your self-reflective essay, as we've done now. And you will have to ask yourself, so what is my main point? Oh, shame, Dane. It seems as if you really have a problem. Are you on a laptop or on a phone? No, but you write quite a lot, so I suppose you're on a laptop. Okay, maybe your laptop is also on lockdown. You can't make contact. And then what I want you to do is now try and apply that structure. So first make a point, Then you give me an example why you made that point. Then you explain why you see that as an example, and then your link. Okay, that is your point. That would be fine. You just need to remember, in an essay you will have to make it a full a proper full sentence, but it's fine, like, because I can see that you at least understand. So what would be your example? Fine. Now link that, explain why you see that as an example of your point. That's fine. And then I like your explanation. How are you going to link it? Because that action I find people often struggle with. How are you going to link, make a final sentence that refers to your point? The link would be a kind of, I was working with you, I was thinking, I would have ended this kind of structure with, therefore, the exercises, especially those on page 67 of the study guide or tutorial letter 501, helped me to understand the problem better. Because now can you see that more or less complete your argument? Or you can say, therefore, I think, I advise that more exercises should be given, like those on page 65 of tutorial letter 501. Does that make sense to you? Yes, that is, yes, you can't, because then can you see that for the next paragraph, if it had been a longer essay, you could have started with, in addition to my struggle with Concord, I also struggle with sentence construction. And then you apply the same rules, but that in addition to, do you see how that takes your reader or examiner with you? And he can see this was an argument and this is another argument that he is building on his previous argument. If it had been an argumentative essay in which you now want to give an opposing point, you could say, but my friend Daniel, who also struggles with Concord, found no benefit from those exercises, because he says there's a difference between writing an answer and thinking quickly while you are speaking. Do you see? If you can, in addition to, gave the examiner an idea, this person is expanding his paragraph, his argument. On the other hand, now I'm going to get an opposing view. So you now have an idea that I must link not only my paragraph must have a structure, but my essay itself must also have a structure. Let's go back to the so we have the introduction, in which we start say what the essay wants to achieve. In this case, I struggle with English and I need to give feedback on how this course influenced my ability to speak English. Then I have a paragraph. You'll have just please take the instruction seriously. They say about half a page. Don't write a full page and don't only write 2 lines. And then the next one is the conclusion. There's a conclusion that summarizes the main points covered in the assignment. The conclusion clearly and logically captures all the main points covered in the assignment. So now you have to summarize your argument. Your argument is that sorry, I can't put off my phone because that's the way that the head office can contact me while I'm speaking to you. And now it keeps on beeping all the time. I've put it on silent. I apologize. Your argument is that those exercises did help you. So in conclusion, you start with a word that would tell your reader, this is now my summary, this is my conclusion. So in conclusion, finally, therefore, find a word that will introduce the conclusion that the exercise, I did benefit by the exercises. And then on the implications, therefore, I think that even more attention should be paid to exercises on concord and tenses. Or if you think it didn't I want us to go to the main, because you have a mini essay. And then write an argumentative essay of at least 5 paragraphs, about 1 page, in which you respond to the following thesis statement. The process approach is key to acquiring successful academic skills. And I think we have time so that we can actually do the same exercise with this as well. The process approach is key to acquiring successful academic writing skills. Again, you don't work with headings, but how are you going to approach this? What if we go back to the introduction? In the introduction, sets out what the essay wants to achieve. So, what do you want? The first question is, what do you want to achieve with this essay? You say, what do I want to achieve? Inform what the process approach are. That should have been is. So is, oh, never mind, I can't edit your work. Do you know what the process approach is? We'll have to ask Mr. Google about it because I don't know either, but luckily we can quickly no, it can't be. Okay, can you read my screen? It says that the process approach to teaching writing focuses on the writing process rather than the final product. And they say that you should have classroom activities which promote the development of language use. So brainstorming, group discussing, rewriting. So the more exercises you do which involve the use of language, the more it is likely that you will improve your English. Okay, but even if we, I suppose you haven't done the 2 units that's about process approach. But now that you have more or less an idea, they have given you a thesis statement. They use the word thesis statement, and that is a claim. They give you an idea. Now you have to write an essay in which you are going to either prove, which show that you either agree or disagree with this approach, with this statement. How do you, don't worry about, I'm not worried about the content at the moment. So it's not important whether what you are saying is that much correct, but whether you can build an argument. If we go back to what we've done on this, and the structure of an argument, in your introduction, you are going to say, what do they expect of you? If we go to the question I've given you, the process approach is key. We can call that X approach because that's not so important what it is. So X approach is key to acquiring successful academic writing skills. What do you think they want you to do? If we look at what an essay is, I keep on going to the wrong, that's it. What do they expect of you? Do they want you to discuss, explore, compare, persuade them? Which of these activities do you think you are going to do in this essay? That's very good. Discuss. So you have decided on more than one view of X approach. And then you are going to try and persuade your reader of your argument. So if you then think, what are you going to have in your introduction? Okay, what you are going to define, what the process entails. I translate as what exactly you are going to give them the feedback about or a definition of the process. That's correct. I don't think that in the introduction you can already say whether you agree or not. I think it should be in order, or yes, to evaluate whether the process approach, the process approach can help with the development of academic writing skills. Because what they actually want you to do, if you look at this, is they want you to evaluate whether this approach is the correct one for successful academic writing skills. So that first, that bit is correct, that the process entails. That is correct. You are giving the examiner an idea, you put him in the context of what you are going to write about. But in this case, I would say use the word evaluate the truth of the statement, or the validity of the statement. Do you understand my argument, Dane? Yes, that's a much better argument. Yes, that, so rather say evaluate whether the process approach is the right process to use, and if this process affects, that should be an A, affects academic writing. Yes, and can you see that by choosing the right verb, like evaluate, you improve the rest of your sentence construction. It's very important to choose the correct verb. As we go on with these classes, I will set out exercises for you which are the right phrases to use while you are working on your argument. But yes, so if we look at the structure of the essay, as we go, it is. So we have our introduction. What do you think will be what will we do here with view 1? What? Okay, so in the view 1, you are going to speak about what are the advantages of the process approach. And you are going to give, then you are, remember, you are going to give an example, explain, and give a link at the end. Remember that exercise we did on the previous one. Then, if we go back to that structure that we looked at, you have a view in which you say that you agree and the reasons for it. What are you going to do in this part? Okay. Views from other individuals, do they agree? It can't be any other individuals. You will have to, I suppose if they ask you a question like that, they have other approaches that they consider as well. But it can't be, remember, you are now in an academic environment. It's not like in our ordinary social communication. I'll ask a friend for her opinion, but when we do academic writing, you must have credible sources. So you have an option there to go and look for how do people generally critique the process approach, or if there are other approaches to academic writing which also affect the writing. But your idea is good. I'm only worried about this bit, because in academic writing, we have credible sources. We don't take everybody, it's not a free for all. Everybody has the right to an opinion. So let's go through it. You say you have your introduction where you say you're going to evaluate. Then you give the view or what is good about the process approach. Then you have somebody else's view who does not agree that the process approach will work. And now if we go back to that, at this stage, rebuttal means, are you going to take his opposing view and say why you don't agree with it? Or if you take the synthesizing view, you say, I agree that approach is good. He says, I think process approach is good. This one say, I'm working with an article in which they encourage people to give the students certain phrases. They speak about a phrase bank. Now the phrase bank approach is different. And then if I take the synthesizing approach, then I say this is good of the process approach, and it can be complemented, it can be added on by using ideas from this view. I'm going to repeat it because I kind of interrupted myself. You have an introduction, you give a view. Then you get a view from somebody who does not agree with you. And in your rebuttal, you explain, or you, you explain why the opposing arguments are not convincing. Or you can also say, but it's not necessary to have only one approach. From my opponent, I learned X, Y, and Z, and that can be added to my view there. Now we come to the conclusion. Then I need an indication. Did you understand how the argumentative essay, how we present an argument? Do you understand it a bit better now? You ask very good questions. You say, I understand, but I want to know, where will I find the opposing view? Will I ask other students? No. Other students? In this case, in the self-reflective essay, it is because you are reflecting on your experience. And it's part of your experience to have the opinion of other students. But here you will have to, if it's not covered in your study guide, you will have to put into Google criticism of the process approach. And then you will find articles written about it, or at least where they comment on it, and then you will work from there. I think there's usually, you ask, or is there a different approach? There will be. Because when I did my master's, it was about how do you teach people adults in a setting, and there they worked on the influence of the cultural differences. So that is already if people understand the culture of the language that they are learning, it makes it easier. Therefore, it's not enough to teach somebody merely a formal language structure that will get them to a degree. You also have to teach them about paragraphs and transition words, and then especially about referencing. Do you understand? So there are other approaches as well. You ask, I have no idea what I will use as my complementary view. That if you are evaluating, it is not necessary to have both an opposing view and a complementary view in one essay, not on your level. So I want you to have a picture in your mind of two columns. In one you have the arguments in favor, and the other one you have the arguments against, and then your conclusion is then based on which side do you choose. I think these questions that you've asked, when you've worked through those, because I think it's study unit 5 and 6 that you need to work through before you write this essay. And I think that all, the answers will then be clearer to you about how to answer that. Now, do you see that if we decided that in our introduction, we are going to use the verb evaluate, remember? Now, after I have evaluated something, what do I say then? Because it's important that you link in your conclusion, that you refer to the verb that you have used right at the beginning. Let's, for instance, that you have compared the process approached yes, you have compared it to a structured approach. You have decided that yes, therefore, or in conclusion, I found that, and what I would have added there, because it's I can see that you would have a strong conclusion, what I would have had, therefore, after having evaluated or having compared or having analyzed, I have found that. You must just remember, I don't know how quickly you are typing at the moment. If you're like me, I'm freezing at the moment, so I can't type quickly. I must be with a capital letter, especially in academic writing. Therefore, I have found that, yes, Dane, I think that was a very strong, that is the beginning to a very strong conclusion. Okay, I see you have. I know, and now I is a lovely capital letter. Okay, Dane, thank you for coming to the class, and I hope that you understand a bit more about how to tackle that assignment. I think it's your assignment 3. I hope you understand better how to approach it and how to approach all your essays. That we find the information, we organize them, and then we start structuring our argument, and only then does the writing process begins? Okay. I don't know. We'll have to decide. Are you writing many exams in June, then, Dan? Okay, so you are writing 4 exams. English isn't one of them. Yes, I don't. Oh, you are writing an exam for ENG 1514 at the end of the year, but your last assignment must be in somewhere in August, I think. Okay, I just need to know for my planning for June. But thank you very much. And I hope wherever you are, you're not too cold, and please stay safe.